For Pacifica Radio, I'm Christina Onnested. 7 days until the U.S. defaults on its debt, and lawmakers still haven't come to agreement about lifting the nation's borrowing limit. As Republicans are pushing for spending cuts, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy's rejecting a White House counteroffer to freeze spending instead of cutting. Negotiators are to reconvene today. A default would stop many payments for social services like Social Security that seniors and the disabled rely on. Democrats in the House introduced legislation to increase Social Security payments Tuesday. Earlier this year in March, the Social Security Trust's annual report forecasted its survivors' benefits and retirement fund will be insolvent by the year 2034, when it could only pay 80% of people's payouts. Social Security 2100 would seek to stop that from happening by imposing a payroll tax to wages above $400,000 annually. Currently, wages more than $147,000 are exempt from that tax, which is used to fund Social Security. The South Carolina Senate has approved a bill that would ban most abortions after around 6 weeks of pregnancy, sending the bill to the governor, who has promised to sign it. The proposal passed Tuesday restores the ban South Carolina had in place when the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade last year. The state's highest court overturned that ban, ruling it violated the state constitution's right to privacy. Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis is set to announce his 2024 presidential campaign today, pitting him against a one-time ally, Donald Trump. The conservative governor, who's codified laws that suppress voting rights, trans rights, free speech, reproductive rights, and school instruction on racism, plans to announce his presidential run on Twitter with its CEO, Elon Musk. The Republican-controlled House is set to vote on a measure to repeal President Joe Biden's student debt relief plan today. Suzanne Potter reports.
Opponents are invoking the Congressional Records Act, which allows lawmakers to nullify recently passed bills. Mike Pierce with the Student Borrower Protection Center says the bill could also revive some debt already canceled under the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program.
The student debt CRA scheme would reinstate the student loan debt of more than 260,000 public service workers nationwide, drop a nearly $20 billion debt burden onto the backs of these hardworking teachers, nurses, first responders, and service members still emerging from the pandemic.
I'm Suzanne Potter.
The House voted to overturn a new Biden administration rule aimed at slashing toxic air pollution from heavy-duty trucks yesterday. The vote Tuesday was along near party lines. Christopher Martinez reports.
The EPA rule raises standards for toxic pollutants from heavy-duty truck engines, including unhealthy nitrogen oxides, ozone, and particulate matter linked to heart and lung problems. Republicans say the rule places an expensive burden on truckers. They also argue that higher costs would be passed on to consumers, leading to more inflation. Republican Bill Johnson of Ohio presented the measure to rescind the new EPA rule.
EPA's regulatory efforts are just the latest step by the Biden administration to electrify the transportation sector and burden American families in the process.
Democratic lawmakers disagree.
It's hard for me to imagine that the majority is so set on repealing a rule that will literally save lives and improve the health of millions of Americans across the country. But unfortunately, that's what we face here.
Frank Pallone is a Democrat from New Jersey. He says the EPA's rule is expected to prevent up to 2,900 premature deaths, nearly 7,000 emergency room visits and hospital admissions, and 18,000 cases of childhood asthma, altogether saving $200 billion in health care costs. President Biden has already said he'll veto the measure. I'm Christopher Martinez.
2 Latino lawmakers announced a bipartisan immigration reform bill on Capitol Hill Tuesday, the Dignity Act. Here's Florida Republican Representative Marina Elvira Salazar.
Securing the border will not cost 1 penny to the taxpayers. Second, it stops catch and release. Anyone claiming asylum will immediately go to a humanitarian center or campus, humanitarian campus. And in 60 days, highly trained asylum officers will decide your case. No more hiding somewhere. We're going to treat you well and we're going to determine your case in 2 months.
It's also backed by Texas Democrat Veronica Escobar. The nearly 500-page bill includes a path for citizenship for Dreamers, undocumented immigrants brought to the U.S. as children, and a path for undocumented immigrants to live and work in the U.S. Their paychecks would be levied 1.5% to fund border security. House Republicans held a hearing about unaccompanied migrant children entering the U.S. yesterday. It comes as several Republican-controlled states are loosening child labor laws. Max Pringle reports.
Several Republican-controlled states have begun loosening child labor laws to help employers fill empty jobs, often dangerous ones, like in meat processing plants, auto manufacturing, and construction. Many of those children, it turns out, are unaccompanied migrants.
It's very appalling that kids are working in that environment, and some of them are only 12 or 13 years old.
Reed Mackey is director of child labor for the National Consumers League. He said unaccompanied minor kids are especially vulnerable to exploitation.
They may have incurred coyote fees that they need to pay off, and these kids are really in a tough spot. They're going into these horrible jobs. I don't think they have any idea what they're about to deal with.
Lawmakers who support relaxing the child labor laws argue that it gives kids valuable work experience and makes it easier for kids to supplement family income. But opponents like Reed Mackey said the bills, mostly backed by business groups, are attempting to roll back crucial child labor protections that have been in place for a century or more. I'm Max Pringle.
I'm Christina Onnested, reporting for Pacifica Radio.